The scent of roasted peppers and sizzling carnitas hung in the air at a bustling Chipotle on an unremarkable afternoon. Elon Musk, the man who regularly sends rockets into the void and crafts electric cars that hum through city streets, stood in line, pondering his order. His presence was magnetic yet understated, blending into the mundane backdrop of avocado greens and terracotta browns that characterized the eatery. Few in the line seemed to notice him immediately. Perhaps the oversized black hoodie and worn sneakers helped him blend in. But the moment he reached the counter, the quiet hum of recognition rippled through the room like a dropped pebble in still water. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. He approached the glass counter with the same intent focus you might apply to engineering reusable rocket boosters. His brow furrowed slightly as he scanned the ingredients, the way one might scrutinize a technical blueprint. "Bowl, please," he said, his voice measured but unhurried. The server, a teenager with earbuds dangling around his neck, snapped into action, spooning rice into the bowl with a practiced hand. As Musk deliberated over black or pinto beans, something shifted in the background. Near the soda fountain, two boys stood whispering, their heads bent close in conspiratorial excitement. They were no older than 12, both clutching their half-eaten burritos as though suddenly frozen in time. Their eyes darted toward Musk, wide with a mix of astonishment and mischief. If anyone else noticed the scene, they didn't show it. Most were too busy scrolling on their phones or juggling salsa-laden tortillas. Unaware of the commotion beginning to brew behind him, Musk moved down the assembly line. "Double chicken," he said, pausing for an extra moment, as if weighing the caloric efficiency of his protein intake. His fingers tapped lightly against the counter, a rhythmic habit, perhaps, or a subconscious nod to some algorithm running in the back of his mind. The boys behind him began whispering more animatedly, their faces lighting up as though they'd uncovered a buried treasure. Musk, now at the topping station, reached a hand up to adjust the neckline of his hoodie. It was then that he stopped cold, mid-reach. The whispering had grown louder, almost impossible to ignore. His head tilted ever so slightly to one side, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, as though he just intercepted a radio signal from Mars. His body didn't turn, but his attention clearly had. The boys, sensing that they'd been noticed, abruptly froze, their mouths slightly agape. Musk didn't move for a moment, his hands still resting near his collar, as though held there by invisible strings. Then, in one fluid motion, he turned, his sharp gaze landing squarely on the young duo. The room seemed to contract. Conversations dulled, rappers crinkled less, and the soda fountain's usual drone suddenly felt distant. Musk's expression was one of mild amusement, the kind you'd wear when a toddler tries to explain quantum mechanics with a crayon drawing. The boys blinked, their courage visibly teetering on the brink of collapse. One of them, the shorter of the two with freckles splattered across his nose, clutched his burrito tighter. The other, taller but no less fidgety, stepped forward half a pace, his sneakers squeaking faintly on the tiled floor. They exchanged a quick glance, a silent debate about whether to retreat or press on. Musk raised an eyebrow, a gesture that seemed to ask, "Well?" It was the freckled boy who broke the silence. "Are you?" He hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you the guy who's going to put chips in our brains?" There it was, the question that had bubbled up from their whispers like carbonation from a soda. The room didn't quite erupt into laughter, but the tension cracked, and a few patrons chuckled softly into their burritos. Musk's smirk widened, not into a full grin, but something closer to the expression of someone trying to hold in a laugh at an inside joke. For a moment, Musk didn't respond. His gaze flickered briefly to the burrito bowl in front of him, now waiting at the register before returning to the boys. "Chips," he finally said, his tone even, though his eyes gleamed with mischief. "Not the tortilla kind, I assume." The taller boy snorted unexpectedly, clapping a hand over his mouth as if he just committed a grave social faux pas. His companion, emboldened by the moment, piped up, "No, like brain chips. You know, so we can, like, talk to robots or something." Musk leaned slightly forward, resting a hand on the counter. "You mean Neuralink," he said, his voice calm, but with the unmistakable undertone of someone who thrives on unexpected challenges. The boys nodded, their earlier nerves now tempered by the spark of genuine curiosity. "Not in your brains," Musk clarified. Yet, the way he delivered the word, precise, deliberate, left just enough room for interpretation to keep the boys' imaginations spinning. Their eyes widened, and for a fleeting moment, Musk's smirk turned into something closer to a genuine smile. The interaction was over as quickly as it had begun. Musk straightened, gave a small nod to the boys as if to say, "Good question," and turned back to pay for his meal. The boys lingered, their earlier whispers replaced by animated chatter. The freckled one mimed a robot voice, while the taller boy pretended to type on an invisible keyboard. Their laughter rippled through the space, infectious and unrestrained. Musk, now balancing his tray and drink, made his way to a corner table. As he sat, his gaze briefly swept the room, landing on the boys one last time. They were still talking, still animated, still utterly consumed by the idea that they'd just had a conversation, however brief, with that guy. The rest of the meal unfolded without incident. Musk ate with an efficiency that bordered on methodical, pausing only to sip his drink or glance occasionally at his phone. He seemed wholly unbothered by the earlier exchange, his demeanor relaxed and unhurried. Yet there was a faint energy about him, as though the interaction had added some small spark to his day. As he disposed of his tray and exited the Chipotle, the boys watched him go, their chatter slowing as he disappeared out the door. For a few moments they stood silent, as though the weight of what had just happened was only now sinking in. The implications of that brief encounter were not lost on the other patrons, many of whom would later recount the story to friends with a mix of humor and awe. Musk, the man who built electric empires and redefined space travel, had stopped in their local Chipotle and stopped cold at the whispers of two curious kids. It was a reminder, in its own peculiar way, that even the most forward-thinking minds can be drawn into the orbit of simple human curiosity, and that sometimes the questions of the young are the ones worth stopping for. As Musk stepped out into the sunlight, the automatic door closing softly behind him, the energy inside the Chipotle lingered like the scent of freshly grilled steak. The two boys, now seated at their table, replayed the interaction in vivid detail, each trying to outdo the other in recounting their version of events. The freckled one mimicked Musk's raised eyebrow, while the taller one tried his best to replicate the businessman's deliberate pause when he'd said, "Yet." For the other patrons, the moment felt surreal, a fleeting brush with a man whose ideas had launched rockets and sparked debates about the future of humanity. The simplicity of the scene, Elon Musk ordering a chicken bowl at Chipotle, stood in stark contrast to the magnitude of his persona. Yet it also felt oddly fitting. Musk's world, as vast and complex as it might seem, is built on the fundamentals of curiosity and connection. And there, in that small moment, he'd engaged with two boys not as the CEO of a tech empire, but as someone willing to share a sliver of wonder. Outside, Musk slid into the driver's seat of his Tesla, placing his phone on the console with the same deliberate care he'd shown while choosing toppings. As the car hummed to life, he lingered for a moment, staring ahead as if recalculating his next trajectory. Then, with a small grin tugging at his lips, he drove off, leaving behind two boys forever inspired in a story no one in that Chipotle would soon forget. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.